Hey everybody, welcome into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. As promised, it's another practice report. It's brought to you by Byers Auto. That's Tim May and Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Just a couple days away now. Wednesday practice in the books for Ohio State as they get set to welcome in Maryland at noon in the Horseshoe. It's October and it's the first Ohio State Big Ten home game, and they've already played two on the road. That's a little bit of a quirk in the schedule. It's the way it goes. But the Buckeyes getting ready for that one. And look at this tonight, talking about a team that's getting healthier. Thayer Munford returning to the lineup last week, talking about that process. Sevyn Banks back in the starting lineup last week as he says he's still not 100% yet, working his way back from that ankle injury that required some surgery, kept him out of spring practice for the most part. Add that back in the mix for Ohio State. Marcus Crowley, you could go down the list. Marcus Crowley's not going to start running back, but he's going to add more depth and playing well. Got injured against this Maryland team 2 years ago. So I guess what I'm saying, Berm, is that there is a lot of reasons you could look at this team and still expect that that upward trajectory can continue.
Yeah, and I think the biggest takeaway for me tonight was just watching everyone. It seemed like the mental health was better for everyone here tonight. You know what I mean? Like there's a noticeable difference in the relaxation level of the guys around here after the Rutgers game and the way that they performed that week and executed the game plan. And I think there's just a growing confidence after the first couple weeks where things were very, very tenuous. And a lot of people were like, I don't know what I should say or what I shouldn't say. But yeah, I mean, you think about the guys coming back from injury that were in the offseason, that were early part of the year. And what you're seeing is what we talked about all offseason was a team that had more depth than maybe any Ohio State team I could remember, but inexperienced depth that's now turning into experienced depth. And at cornerback specifically, Sevyn Banks and Cameron Brown are both fighting these nagging injuries, but their challenges to get on the field have opened the door for perhaps the story of the year for Ohio State and Denzel Burke. And as these guys continue to get healthy, you're going to see more and more of an impact from them. And I think overall, it just leads to a much happier group of guys.
Yeah, Denzel Burke, who's yet to be named Freshman of the Week in the Big Ten, but I think that's coming.
Boy, that's tough when he gets a pick six and he can't even crack that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, C.J. Stroud's big comeback, I guess that did turn heads, and it definitely, but Denzel Burke turns heads every time he plays, and he may get some opportunities this week, I'm just based on what we saw of Maryland on video from last week. But I mean, we've talked about this a lot on these things, and even in my podcast, and you guys at Roosters, it's like you had to give this team time. But then on top of that, you had to do a makeover. I'm talking about defensively. You had to do a makeover 2 games into the year about what you really wanted to feature defensively, and young guys coming along in that regard. So you had patience was the key word there. It still is to a certain extent, but you can see guys elevating their games from a confidence standpoint on both sides of the ball, especially on the defensive side. And that's what's going to carry these guys. This team, even Ryan Day's talking about it. This team is much better than it was 4 or 5 weeks ago. You can see it. And when the head coach kind of points it out, I think he feels pretty good about the trajectory.
Well, and I think that this is another sort of feel-good opportunity if you're talking about that Ohio State secondary. If you're going against a Mike Locksley offense anytime, there's going to be opportunities there, but especially the way they've played recently and not protecting the football, certainly last week against Iowa. And
and their top pass catcher is out for the year now with the torn ACL.
I wasn't trying to bait Sevyn Banks, but I asked him, 5 or 6 interceptions. You watch a team do that the week before.
He couldn't hide.
He
the
smiled,
smile.
but then he gave the political right answer.
And I think that for him too, like you talked about patience, Tim. I think there's an element of Sevyn Banks that he did not want to be patient with his own injury, and the way that maybe he and Cameron Brown approached training camp and the first couple of weeks of the season were different, and it may have set Sevyn Banks back a little bit more to try and rush back from the ankle because he was trying to prove that he could be a first-round draft pick and set himself up to make a bunch of money on and off the field in the future, and it didn't quite work. And if he was trying, we had talked, Berm, about the practice habits needed to improve if he's going to reclaim his starting job, and we saw that happen over the last couple of weeks when being one of the last people to leave the field, but he's also not going to be able to practice at a high level if injured. So it was sort of a catch-22 situation that I think he's now just trying to come out of.
Well, a lot of these older guys, again, and we talked about it at Roosters on Monday, it's like you think sort of it's your job because you've been here, and then someone shows up and balls out the way Denzel Burke has, and all of a sudden there's this added pressure to go out and maybe try to do more than you should be trying to come back from injury. And not even just that, but when you're talking about a team in its own right that just needs veterans to play, that might force guys to try to hurry things. And I think it's important for Ohio State that Sevyn Banks get healthy. Same with Cameron Brown, but also as I said earlier, like this is about mental confidence and about understanding. Hey, I have a role here, and for Ohio State to be its best, Sevyn Banks and Cameron Brown have to be able to play and play a lot. Cameron Brown may not be the physical upside, the physical ceiling that Sevyn Banks has, but he, obviously handled his things a little bit slower, and so then
I might argue with that a little bit.
I think it's I think that we've heard all the rumors, all the talk, all offseason that Sevyn Banks was a guy that NFL teams were looking at as a very high draft pick. And so
there were all kinds of assessments of him
right, so
on the
internet. You start to hear that, and then you go, okay, well, I got to get on the field to show this, and that might inform some of the decisions you make trying to get there.
The other guy we got to talk to today, Bryson Shaw. I mean, I'll be honest about it. He looked like a little bit of a duck out of water at that one high safety look, and especially when Josh Proctor went down. It appeared to be one of the Achilles in that defense. And now, just talking to him today, that two high safety, he feels like he can play anything, but he clearly looks more comfortable playing that role, and you've got a rising guy like Lathan Ransom coming on, just the things are trying, the people are bringing along in the defensive secondary who all are gaining confidence at the same time is going to serve this team extremely well, like we talked about earlier. But there's another guy who, kind of got put into a tough situation and thrown into the fire.
I think the other interesting dynamic when talking about guys working back from injury, again, the theme of this week's practice report brought to you by Byers Auto with what Marcus Crowley showed last week, and Mayan Williams trying to get back from his own injury and what that means for the carries moving forward behind Travion Henderson. Master Teague practicing well, obviously can finish off some drives and short yardage situation, all that. Like, Ohio State's in this position now, offensive line with Matt Jones, running back with Crowley, where they can play depth, and you wonder, are they going to get back in a situation where they try to do it too much? Crowley looks like someone who deserves to play, and so does Master Teague, and we saw what Mayan Williams did in the opener. So that's
it's almost like they have
a difficult balancing act for Tony Alford, but it also might not be because Travion Henderson is
it's
so
almost
good.
like they have a built-in waiver wire they can go to. I mean, you know what I mean, for want of another term, comparing it to an NFL team, but you are seeing guys rise. Go ahead, Berm.
The point I think you're trying to make there is that no matter how much depth you have at running back, when you have one that is so head and shoulders above the others as far as what he's capable of doing any given play, that guy's going to get the bulk of the carries. And I think Ohio State fans are, he only had 9 carries against Rutgers. Who cares? 7 carries, whatever.
Yeah, but they also saw him get
barely right in the middle.
8 carries. So, but that, he got dinged up and left the game after the
There's a
end of
key
the first
moment
quarter.
there.
But in an ideal world against Maryland, I don't want Travion Henderson having more than 10 carries. If he can go out there and get 10 carries for 100 yards and score a touchdown, and you leave the game 24-7, great. I mean, I don't know. One of the reasons when I talked to Travion Henderson and Evan Pryor, both in high school, as they were getting ready to come here, when people, why would you go to into a class with another running back in the top 3 in the country? They both said, I don't want to have 25 carries a game. I want to be fresh for the NFL. Yeah. And then, now you're at Ohio State. That's the beauty of a depth chart where you have 85 guys who can play.
Yeah. I mean, it's curious. I mean, I want to ask you guys this. Are we short shrifting Maryland? Maryland was undefeated this time a week ago.
I watched them play against Illinois, and I watched them play against Iowa.
I know. I just want to see what you would say. I was giving my man a shot.
Maryland, I mean, again, we are in Beat M week, as it says up there on the scoreboard. Maryland is a much improved version of what they've been athletically, but they're still very poorly coached, and that matters. This is a team that has individual talents that can play at Ohio State. They're guys like Raheem Jarrett, Brandon Jennings. These are guys that were recruited by Ohio State, can play at Ohio State. The key for Ohio State in that game, in my opinion, is just getting pressure on the quarterback, because we saw what happened against Iowa. Iowa doesn't have to get a lot of sacks. They get pressure, and if you have a quarterback like Tagovailoa, however you say his name, he's going to make mistakes. Tuatito is going to make mistakes if you give him a chance. So you got to get pressure on him, and that's why I thought it was great tonight to see Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau out here, getting a chance to see those guys for the first time and talk to them since they've been here. And this is a team that is just building pressure, and I think that they're going to hit home a few times on Saturday.
Major news, Berm.
Yep.
He's not JTT.
Correct.
So we're going to have to get rid of that shorthand.
Yes. He does not like it.
He doesn't like it, and his mom doesn't like it, and I think that's important. And I asked him, does that mean we need to just start calling you Jalen Tuimoloau?
Yeah.
And he said, no, you don't have to do that, but I'm not JTT.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious he's not JTT. And number two,
Well, I didn't know it was obvious.
He's not down with JTT.
I know. I'm just messing with you.
I didn't know that was his name.
No, I just talked to some people,
He was so quiet during the recruitment, like he never got a chance to tell anybody. Don't call me that.
Seriously, that is a 5-star, maybe the best player in the class guy that just slipped into town in July. Well, he did get, it was some hoopla, but I mean, this guy is now starting. He's now playing regularly on the Ohio State defensive front. I mean, that little thing I wrote about Haskell Garrett and stuff. He was in on that play too. The blocked pad. I mean, he is a key component in this defense, and that just shows you what Larry Johnson thinks of him, what Ryan Day does, and his ability, and also taking advantage of opportunities because of injuries to other guys. But he and Jack Sawyer, man, you can see what's coming from this group, especially next year, and that's why we're always talking about patience. But Tuimoloau is going to get better and better and better. You can see it.
Well, and then at some point, maybe Saturday, Tyreek Smith goes back into that mix, and you have one more 5-star.
Yeah.
He's obviously been injured and has seen, for 2 weeks, just the same way C.J. Stroud did when Kyle McCord stepped in. Hey, nothing, as you said, is promised with this job. Tyreek Smith will know that he's got to deliver when he comes back. That will be potentially Saturday against noon. We'll have to wait.
Against noon?
Against noon?
Against noon at Maryland.
Kevin Noon?
There's a.
I'm glad. I think it's here.
I think the point is, Ryan Day said a few weeks ago there was going to be some very difficult decisions and very difficult conversations with people, and he wasn't worried about hurting feelings anymore. So if you're one of these veterans on the team and you want your spot back, you better come earn it. That's bottom line, and that starts Saturday at noon against Maryland. Ohio State's homecoming at Ohio Stadium.
The best and the deserving are going to play, I think,
Fox.
is the message.
I should have written all that down.
Get there early because there's homecoming festivities. There's a ton of construction and murder.
There's a ton of murder. There's not a ton of murder.
There's a ton of people
now you're channeling
who
Terrell
just
Pryor.
want to get where they're going, and it leads to the feeling of rage on the roads.
So to avoid
murder, get there early and be loud, right?
You and I just really nailed the end of this video.
Welcome back to Rapid Reaction.
I think one guy bent the nail, but go ahead.
This is why you come to Lettermen Row for practice reports that are brought to you by Byers Auto. Why you might subscribe for $10 for an entire year as part of the On3 debut, as Lettermen Row is part of that network now. You can get that deal, and it's, I think, 3 cents a day.
3 cents a day.
And you can hear
3 cents a day for all this nonsense.
Berm and I try and sort through all of our nonsense. It's a lot easier when we write it out instead of doing whatever this was. That's Tim May and Berm. I am Austin Ward. This has been Practice Report. It's brought to you by Byers Auto. Stay with us for full coverage of Ohio State and Maryland, which is Saturday at noon. See you then.